Thanks very much. I've been asked to comment on the current regulatory situation, which is in a state of flux, and to make some comments on where I think it's going. As everyone knows, President Obama had a major plank in his platform was regulatory reform, addressing the horrors of the last couple of years and doing something about it in terms of changing a regulatory system that has obviously failed. There are no shortage of ideas about how this should be done. And I guess the most comprehensive one, in which we all are going to have to listen to, is 88 pages of regulatory reform that have come from the present administration. Along with that, I have a list here of various groups, official and unofficial, that are in the process of putting forth their ideas on what regulatory reform should look like. There's the Obama administration plan, there's the new Democratic plan, the House Republican plan, the Committee on Capital Markets Regulation emanating out of Harvard University, the Frank Dodd plan, et cetera, et cetera. I would only make this comment that I think the risk now is that we rush into regulatory reform before we have really thought it through. If you hearken back to 1929 and the Glass-Steagall Act and the formation of the SEC and so forth and so on, it took a number of years and it took a PCORA committee of investigative effort to finally come up with some regulatory issues or initiatives, if you will. The SEC itself, the Securities Acts of 33 and 34. So here we are, committed. The chairman of the House Financial Services Committee, the chairman of the Senate Banking Committee have committed to get regulatory reform done by year end. I believe that we're putting the cart slightly before the horse in terms of really figuring out. We now have a committee that the House and the Senate have put together. It's the new PCORA committee, if you will. It's been authorized. It hasn't been peopled. They're about to start their work. They have a year and a half timetable before they'll come back with an analysis of what went wrong and what failures we had and so forth. I find it somewhat curious that we're going to initiate the regulatory changes before we take a good hard look at what happened and what failed. Be that as it may, there are several areas that are coming out of the President's plan that are going to be very controversial. Perhaps the most controversial is a concept of a systemic risk oversight or systemic risk regulator. And I think there's general agreement that somehow the responsibilities of the current regulatory agencies of our government have let slip in between the cracks systemic problems that didn't appear by the regulation of individual entities. And therefore, the President has proposed a systemic risk regulator. And that systemic risk regulator is to have superpowers to look into the cracks and see if there are risks building up, and then to do something about it. The systemic risk regulator has as a governing board the heads of the various agencies, the SEC, CFTC, and so forth. And the chairman of that board is proposed to be the Secretary of the Treasury. The real responsibility where the systemic risk regulator is to reside is within the Federal Reserve. I would only say this, that as Bill McDonough has just explained, the Federal Reserve has a very limited and key responsibility, which is sustainable interest rates, if you will, and sustainable employment. And insofar as we put other matters into their bailiwick, if you will, it seems to me that we're asking for trouble. I think the issue is whether systemic oversight should be a regulatory agency or whether it should be an oversight agency that once it finds things about to go wrong, turns those things over to the regulators that are in position now. I won't go into the 86 pages of changes that are going to go on. I would characterize it as a rather mild approach, as being billed as a big-time regulatory change, with the exception of the systemic concept and the concept of oversight of entities that are too big to fail. I believe that we haven't even begun to look at what has caused the existence of entities that are too big to fail. And if you think about that, back in 1929 we had Glass-Steagall. Glass-Steagall addressed the conflict of interest between commercial banking and investment banking. If we look at our entities today, we have massive conflicts of interest built into firms that are, quote, too big to fail. And until we address that problem, until we address the problem of how do we get rid of these conflicts, and by the way, as we get rid of them, we shrink the size of some of our too big to fail institutions. It's until we do that, I think we're just rearranging the chairs on the deck, and I think we're doing it in too rapid a fashion before we really know what the causes were of this problem we're in now. Thanks.